you're living in the year 2026, and you wake up, open your laptop, and you just stare at a blank prompt box.
Right. Something we all do pretty much every day now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you type a single, I don't know, somewhat abstract sentence.
Yeah.
Within seconds, a system generates this photorealistic, fully rendered video of a city that just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Or maybe you ask it to compose a symphony, like in the style of Mozart, and it outputs a flawlessly orchestrated piece of music.
Which is still wild to think about.
It's totally wild. Or, like in a professional setting, you prompt a system to design a highly efficient architectural structure, and it literally hands you blueprints for a load-bearing framework that no human engineer had ever even conceived.
Yeah, it really does feel like magic sometimes.
It feels like magic. I mean, it feels like we've crossed this massive threshold and finally built machines that are fundamentally, genuinely creative.
Well, it certainly looks that way on the surface.
Right. But what if I told you that despite all of these incredible mind-bending advancements we are interacting with every single day, the most powerful artificial intelligence systems on Earth are structurally and fundamentally incapable of creating anything truly new?
It's a massive, highly provocative claim, especially given the sheer volume of synthetic media we're all swimming in right now. I mean, we look at the output, right?
Yeah, the art, the music, the code.
Exactly. We look at that output and we naturally assume that because the output itself is novel, the internal process behind it must be creative.
We project human attributes right onto the machine.
Right, we do. But the argument we are looking at today suggests that this projection is just a profound illusion.
And that brings us to the source material for today's deep dive. We are looking at a deeply philosophical, highly structured ontological critique by Jamie Thornberry.
It's a heavy text, but it's brilliant.
It really is. The primary text is titled Beyond Biology, a love-life light ontological critique of artificial evolution and the limits of algorithmic creativity.
Quite a mouthful.
Yeah, definitely. And we're also parsing through its companion script, a really fascinating piece called The Human Spark.
Right.
The mission of this deep dive today is to unpack Thornberry's framework.
Right.
Because this isn't just like a critique of current software bugs. It's an attempt to draw an absolute non-negotiable boundary between algorithmic optimization on the one hand and true human meaning on the other.
And the word ontological in that title, that is the anchor for everything we're going to discuss today.
Let's define that really quickly.
Sure. So Thornberry isn't making a technological argument. This isn't a debate about whether we have enough computing power or if our neural network architectures are deep enough or if we just need more training data.
Right. It's deeper than that.
Way deeper. Ontology is the philosophical study of being. It's about the fundamental nature of what things actually are.
So Thornberry is arguing that the difference between a machine generating an image and a human painting a canvas is a difference in their very state of being.
Exactly. It's not a matter of scale. It's a matter of kind.
Now, before we really get into the weeds here, I do want to offer a quick disclaimer. The goal today isn't for us to take a definitive side on the future of AI technology or to tell you that you have to adopt this author's specific philosophical worldview.
Right. We're not here to preach.
Exactly. As always, our job is to impartially map out this deeply thought-provoking framework. We just want to lay out Thornberry's arguments as clearly and rigorously as possible so that you can evaluate these concepts for yourself.
Yeah, and see how they apply to this rapidly changing world around you, because it really provides a completely different lens through which to view technology.
For sure.
And whether you ultimately agree with the conclusion or not, engaging with this framework forces you to ask much sharper, more precise questions about what it is we are actually building when we train these models.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the core thesis of the author. What is the fundamental foundational claim Thornberry is making about why these incredibly advanced systems fall short of true creativity?
Well, Thornberry's central claim is that artificial systems, and the text specifically targets genetic algorithms, evolutionary computation, and deep generative models, they cannot generate true creative intent because they simply do not participate in reality.
Do not participate in reality.
Right. And Thornberry breaks this concept of participation down into three specific, deeply philosophical dimensions: light, life, and love.
Okay, light, life, and love. On the surface, I have to admit, those sound like the themes of a really earnest 1970s folk album.
They really do.
But reading through the text, they are being used as highly rigorous, almost clinical philosophical categories.
Yeah, they are very precise terms in this context. In Thornberry's framework, light refers to disclosure or truth, so the conscious ability to actually perceive reality as it is.
Got it. And life.
Life refers to embodied participation, actually living in the physical world, experiencing tension, and existing dynamically in time.
Which machines obviously don't do.
Right. And then love refers to an alignment with the good, having a purposeful teleological orientation toward what ought to be, rather than just optimizing for what is mathematically efficient.
So Thornberry argues that because machines lack these three dimensions entirely, they are permanently locked out of the domain of true creativity.
Exactly.
So if the machine isn't actually creating anything, if it's just producing an incredibly complex illusion, what exactly is happening under the hood when we get those mind-blowing outputs? Let's dismantle this illusion of machine creativity and look at the hard-coded limits keeping AI trapped in a state of simulation.
To understand the illusion, we really have to look at the mechanics of what these systems are doing, particularly genetic algorithms or evolutionary loops, which Thornberry focuses heavily on. Right now, a lot of optimization software uses this architecture. They generate variations of a design, test them against a mathematical set of rules, select the ones that perform best, and then they essentially breed them to create the next generation and iterate.
They borrow the language of biology so heavily. They mutate, they evolve, they adapt.
And Thornberry argues that adopting this biological language is incredibly dangerous because it obscures the mechanical reality.
Oh, so.
Well, a genetic algorithm is generating structures by simulating evolutionary processes within completely closed, preconditioned mathematical domains. It's mutating variables and selecting what works based on a hard-coded scoring system.
Right.
Thornberry insists this is merely simulation and refinement. It is an algorithmic sorting mechanism. It is not creation.
Wait, hold on. I have to push back here on behalf of anyone who has spent time in latent space generating art.
Go for it.
If a diffusion model generates a stunning, highly detailed image of a cyberpunk city floating in the clouds, right, and that specific arrangement of pixels has literally never existed anywhere in the universe before that exact moment.
Yeah.
Isn't that the literal definition of creating something new? I mean, how can you look at an undeniably new output and say the system didn't create it?
What's fascinating here is how Thornberry anticipates exactly that objection. The author introduces what the text calls the primary axiom, and the axiom states bluntly, creativity is not the production of novelty.
Creativity is not the production of novelty.
Yeah.
Wow. That is a massive paradigm shift.
I feel like culturally, we treat those two concepts as exact synonyms.
We do.
If I make something new, I'm being creative.
We completely treat them as synonyms. But Thornberry argues that reducing creativity to mere novelty or mere complexity is a fundamental category error.
Okay, give me an example.
Think about it this way. If I set up a machine that blindly throws a bucket of paint at a wall every 10 seconds, the resulting splatters are entirely novel.
Right, totally unique every time.
Exactly. The exact arrangement of those paint droplets has never existed before in human history and likely never will again. The output is infinitely complex and entirely original. But was it a creative act, or was it just random physical complexity?
Oh, I see. Thornberry's primary axiom states that true creativity is the intentional alignment of expression with reality. It requires a subject making a choice about meaning.
So it's entirely about the intent behind the arrangement, not the mathematical uniqueness of the arrangement itself.
Precisely. An algorithm does not look at a blank digital canvas and ask, what should exist in the world?
Right.
It asks, what specific arrangement of variables minimizes the loss function according to the mathematical rules and the training data I was given? It is searching a multidimensional mathematical space for a highly probable outcome. It's interpolating data points. It is not expressing a subjective intent.
And the source material is remarkably strict about the language we use to describe this. It introduces this concept called the control principle.
Yes.
It basically lays down a rhetorical rule for how we are allowed to talk about these systems. It says that machine output must always be interpreted as derivative expression generated through constrained recombination of prior human meaning.
That's a crucial phrase.
Yeah, we are never allowed to view it as original authorship.
The phrase prior human meaning is the critical anchor there. Let's look at your cyberpunk city example again.
Okay.
When the AI generates that image, it isn't pulling inspiration from a dream it had or a feeling of urban isolation it experienced on a subway.
Because it hasn't experienced anything.
Exactly. It doesn't even know what a city is. It is mathematically recombining the pixel distributions of millions of human artworks, photographs, and architectural concepts that were fed into its database.
It's shuffling a deck.
It is shuffling an unfathomably large deck of cards that humans painted. And no matter how many millions of times you shuffle the deck, and no matter how unique the order of the cards happens to be in a given hand.
The machine didn't invent the suits.
It didn't invent the suits, it didn't invent the numbers, and it does not understand the concept of the game.
So if the AI isn't actually creating, if it's essentially executing a highly complex, multidimensional statistical shuffle of prior human meaning, what exactly is the invisible wall it's hitting? Why can't it take that next step?
That leads directly into what the text outlines as the 4 irreducible constraints. These act as the bars of this ontological prison.
And we need to be clear that Thornberry does not view these as, like, temporary software bugs.
Not at all.
These are not issues that OpenAI or DeepMind are going to patch in the next iteration of their models.
Right. These are structural limitations built into the very nature of computation itself. The 4 constraints are the dependency constraint, the fitness function constraint, the closed system constraint, and the non-subjectivity constraint.
Let's start with the dependency constraint. I feel like this one is the most intuitive. The text notes that AI systems absolutely require pre-existing data, predefined objectives, and external evaluation criteria.
Yeah.
They cannot originate their own ground of operation. They had to be jump-started by human intent.
Consider the architecture of any AI model sitting on a server. It exists in a state of absolute stasis until a human acts. It requires a prompt, a data set, and a goal. It has no internal motor of desire. A human artist might wake up in the middle of the night with a burning compulsion to sketch an idea because they are wrestling with a concept. The AI never wakes up. It only reacts to the external initiation of a human user.
It's just the blinking cursor in the empty prompt box. The system is dead until we breathe a query into it.
Exactly.
But the second constraint, the fitness function constraint, this is where we start getting into the really restrictive nature of algorithmic architecture, especially with the evolutionary system's Thornberry critiques.
Right. To really understand the fitness function constraint, we have to look at how optimization algorithms actually learn and iterate.
Okay.
In any evolutionary computation or any machine learning model using gradient descent, the system needs a mathematical way to know if it is doing a good job. That is the fitness function or the loss function. It is a predefined scoring system.
Give me a real-world example of that.
Okay. If an algorithm is tasked with designing an airplane wing, the fitness function might be aerodynamic efficiency maximizing lift while minimizing drag.
Makes sense.
The algorithm generates thousands of wing shapes, tests them in simulation, scores them mathematically, and then breeds the highest scoring parameters to create the next generation of wings.
So its entire universe of operation is completely bounded by that single external metric.
Completely bounded. And here is the hard ontological limit Thornberry points out. No algorithmic system can transcend its own fitness function.
Wow.
It optimizes entirely toward external metrics, but it cannot originate its own ground of operation, nor can it redefine what success looks like mid-process.
Let's contextualize this with an analogy for the listener, but let's scale it up. Think about a classic arcade game, something entirely enclosed, like Pac-Man.
Great example.
The entire universe of that game, the physics, the rules, the boundaries, they're all governed by the score. Your only possible objective is to get a higher number.
Right.
Now imagine an AI trained to play it. The AI can get incredibly good at the game. It can find hyper-efficient, superhuman routes to eat the dots and avoid the ghosts. But it is fundamentally trapped within the logic of the score.
It can't break the rules.
Right. It cannot suddenly decide as the player character that the game is actually about pacifism and try to negotiate a truce with the ghosts.
Yeah.
It cannot decide to stop eating dots and just admire the digital maze. The system cannot transcend the goal it was handed.
That captures the limitation perfectly. Mathematical optimization is like a river carving a canyon. The water flows down the path of least resistance, driven entirely by the gravity of the fitness function. It's an inevitability of the physics of the system.
The river doesn't choose its path.
Exactly. Human creativity, on the other hand, is like an engineer building a dam. It is an intentional act of resistance against the default flow. Humans constantly redefine their own fitness functions.
We change our minds all the time.
All the time. An artist might start painting a portrait to capture a realistic likeness, optimizing for accuracy, but halfway through, they make a mistake, realize the mistake expresses a deeper emotional truth, and completely abandon the original goal to pursue this new abstract direction.
And an algorithm just can't do that.
An algorithm cannot abandon its loss function because a loss function is the only reason it is operating in the first place.
Which leads us directly into the final two constraints, which are deeply intertwined. The closed system constraint and the non-subjectivity constraint.
Right.
The source points out that AI operates strictly within bounded symbolic and statistical frameworks. It is processing pixel distributions or token probabilities or mathematical relationships in high-dimensional space.
And because it is trapped in that closed statistical loop manipulating symbols without any access to the physical reality those symbols represent, it suffers from the non-subjectivity constraint.
Which means?
It lacks selfhood. It lacks interiority. It has no lived perspective, no eye from which to view the world.
I can hear people listening to this asking, why does this matter to me? Like, why should you care if a machine lacks interiority or a self if it can still write a perfectly structured email for you or design a sleek logo or draft functional code?
That's the pragmatic pushback, sure.
Right. It matters because it dictates how we value the output. It means all AI outputs are, at their absolute core, just reflections of inputs. They're reflections of your prompts, of the training data, of prior human meaning. But they are never expressions of a self.
Yeah.
When you read a poem written by a human, you are connecting across space and time with another conscious mind that has experienced grief or joy or the fear of mortality. When you read a poem generated by an AI, you are looking into a highly polished mirror reflecting the statistical average of human poetry.
There is nobody home on the other side of the screen.
Exactly. There's nobody home.
It's the difference between an echo and a voice. An echo can be loud, it can be incredibly complex, it can bounce around a canyon and sound hauntingly beautiful, but it originates from a cold rock wall reflecting sound waves generated by someone else.
It has no intent.
Right, it has no internal intent. It is just physics.
So if we want to truly understand what the AI is missing, what that voice actually consists of, we have to look at how humans interact with reality. Which brings us to the core of Thornberry's philosophy, the first pillar of this framework, light.
Let's unpack what Thornberry means by light. In this specific ontological framework, light is defined as the disclosure of reality.
The disclosure of reality.
Right. It is the intelligibility of existence that allows something to be known consciously as it truly is.
The intelligibility of existence. That is a very heavy, dense phrase. Let's break that down for everyone.
Sure, it draws on a long phenomenological tradition. It essentially means that the universe isn't just a chaotic, meaningless jumble of atoms that we happen to bump into. The universe has structure, it has truth, and crucially, human consciousness is capable of perceiving that truth. Reality discloses or reveals itself to us.
So we don't just process data.
Exactly, we experience meaning.
The distinction Thornberry draws here is between processing symbols, which is the domain of AI, and perceiving meaning, which is the domain of human consciousness. The algorithm refines signals. Humans encounter what the signal actually points to.
This touches heavily on semiotics, the study of signs and symbols. The AI only has access to the signifier, never the signified.
Let's look at the illustrative example used in the companion script, The Human Spark. The sunset. I thought this was just such a powerful articulation of the concept.
Oh, it's brilliant.
The text asserts that you can train an AI on 10 million images of sunsets. You can feed a convolutional neural network every high-resolution photograph ever taken of the sun dipping below the horizon.
Yeah.
It will learn exactly how to arrange pixels to simulate the perfect gradient of orange to purple. It will understand the exact statistical likelihood of where a cumulonimbus cloud should be placed for maximum visual balance. It can output a sunset more visually perfect than any photograph.
And yet, the script argues the machine will still never see one.
You ever see one?
Because it only understands the sunset in pixel space. It understands RGB values and mathematical vectors. But it does not feel the warmth of the light fading on its skin.
Right.
It doesn't know that the sun is a star. It doesn't associate the fading light with the passing of time, or the end of a day of hard labor, or the bittersweet existential dread of a beautiful moment ending.
It doesn't recognize beauty.
It doesn't recognize beauty as a transcendent category. It recognizes mathematical optimization. It has syntax, but absolutely zero semantics.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If we take this seriously, If an AI is just imitating structural syntax without actually comprehending any of the underlying semantic meaning, isn't any claim that an AI understands us or perceives a situation just a massive, dangerous category error?
Oh, without a doubt.
Like when an AI chatbot says, I understand how you feel, or I'm sorry to hear that, it is literally just outputting the statistically most probable string of text based on the contextual weights of its training data.
Exactly.
It has no concept of what a feeling even is, let alone empathy.
That is exactly right. And it is why Thornberry relies so heavily on that strict control principle we talked about earlier. The text explicitly states, no claim of machine understanding can ever be made without reducing it strictly to pattern processing.
So it's simulating understanding.
Right. The machine operates within reality. I mean, it exists as physical servers, silicon wafers, and electricity in data centers, but it doesn't participate in reality.
Operates within reality, but doesn't participate in it. I really love that distinction.
Think about a digital thermometer.
Okay.
A thermometer operates within reality. It reacts to kinetic energy and heat. But a thermometer doesn't understand what it feels like to be hot. It doesn't suffer in the heat. It doesn't seek the shade of a tree.
It doesn't crave a glass of cold water.
Exactly. It simply processes a physical input and displays a symbolic output. Thornberry is arguing that the most advanced trillion-parameter large language model is, at its core, just a phenomenally complex thermometer.
Wow.
It is processing massive arrays of representations of reality without ever once touching reality itself.
But perception, this light, this conscious ability to see the sunset and understand its meaning is really only the first step.
Yeah.
Because once we perceive reality, we have to actually live in it.
Huh.
And that brings us to the second, and I think the most visceral pillar of Thornberry's framework, life.
If light is the disclosure of reality, life is defined as the active participation in that structured reality. It is embodiment, it is tension, it is growth through resistance, and it is temporal, becoming existing dynamically through time.
I have to point out the irony we briefly touched on earlier. The terminology we use for these AI systems is entirely co-opted from biology.
It really is.
We literally call them neural networks, genetic algorithms, and evolutionary computation. We talk about models hallucinating or adapting. It sounds incredibly biological. It sounds like we're describing life.
And that biological framing is exactly what makes the illusion of machine creativity so persuasive. It hacks our deeply ingrained evolutionary instincts and tricks our brains into attributing living, conscious qualities to dead mathematical code. The text is brutal in dismantling this illusion. Thornberry argues that an evolutionary algorithm only simulates evolution. It does not live. It can run through billions of design iterations in a matter of hours inside a server farm, but nothing is at stake.
There's no skin in the game,
Yeah.
literally and figuratively.
None. There is no cost to failure. There is no suffering. There is no risk of death.
Which is the ultimate stake.
Right. There is no time passing in a phenomenological sense, and there is no lived memory. It is iterating abstract mathematical states without any existential stake. If a simulated wing design fails the aerodynamic test, a line of code is overwritten. The algorithm doesn't mourn it.
It doesn't fear its own deletion.
No, it just loops to the next variable.
Let's pull on a specific thread introduced in the text here, because I think it is the key to understanding human creativity, the concept of hormesis.
Ah, yes. Hormesis is originally a biological and physiological concept, but Thornberry brilliantly applies it to the philosophy of creativity.
Explain hormesis for us.
Simply put, hormesis means growth through structured resistance or stress. The classic example is lifting weights. When you lift heavy weights, you aren't just magically getting stronger, you are literally tearing your muscle fibers. You are subjecting your biology to stress, resistance, and microscopic damage so that your body adapts and grows back stronger to handle the load. The struggle, the actual physical friction, is the biological mechanism of growth.
And Thornberry says this exact principle applies to human creation. We create through experience, through pain, through friction, and through failure. We are changed by the very act of creating.
Exactly.
And AI just refines statistical outcomes without undergoing any transformation itself.
Think about when a human writes a novel. The process of wrestling with the words, staring at the terrifying blank page, hitting writer's block, experiencing crushing self-doubt, pulling from personal trauma or profound joy to inform the characters, that grueling process fundamentally changes the author.
Yeah, you're not the same person when you finish.
Yeah. The author at the end of writing the book is not the same person who started it. The resistance of the medium shaped their consciousness.
Contrast that with an AI.
A generative text model outputs 1,000 pages of highly structured prose in 3 seconds, and it remains exactly the same mathematical matrix of weights and biases it was 3 seconds prior. It experienced no friction. It underwent no hormesis.
Let's connect this directly to your own life, to the listener. Think about a time you created something that really mattered to you. It doesn't have to be high art, like a novel or a symphony.
It could be anything.
Exactly. Think about putting together a major presentation for work that you were terrified about, or trying to recreate your grandmother's incredibly complicated recipe from memory, or building a piece of furniture for your living room.
Like an IKEA desk that takes 5 hours.
Right. The struggle to make it, the burnt edges of the first batch in the oven, the splinters from sanding the wood, the late nights staring bleary-eyed at the slide deck. That friction was part of the final product's intrinsic value to you.
Yeah.
The meaning of the thing is inextricably intertwined with the effort required to bring it into existence. A machine bypasses the struggle entirely. And by bypassing the struggle, Thornberry argues, it entirely bypasses the life of the creation.
It skips the journey to immediately hand you the destination. But in human creativity, the journey is the substance of the destination.
Wow.
If you use steroids to instantly gain muscle without lifting weights, the muscle is biologically different. It hasn't adapted through stress. Without the embodied participation, without the hormetic friction of life, the output is hollow.
It might be structurally perfect.
It might be mathematically flawless, but it lacks the resonance of lived experience.
So humans perceive truth, that's light. And humans struggle through experience and bodily friction, that's life. But where are we aiming all of this perception and struggle? What is the point of it all?
Right.
This leads us to the final. And Thornberry argues the deepest layer of this ontological framework, love.
This is where Thornberry's philosophical framework becomes explicitly teleological.
Teleological.
Right. Teleology is the philosophical study of purpose, design, or ultimate ends. It asks, what is this for? Thornberry defines love not as a mere emotion, not as romantic love or chemical bonding or sentimentality.
Okay, then how is it defined?
It is defined as an objective alignment with the good. It is a proper, intentional orientation toward what ought to be in the world.
What ought to be, as opposed to just what currently is or what is most efficient.
Exactly. Let's go back to the genetic algorithms and optimization models we talked about. Algorithms have no ought. They are entirely ruthlessly pragmatic.
Yeah.
They optimize for efficiency, for accuracy, for performance within the strict mathematical boundaries of their fitness function. But they cannot step back and ask the fundamental questions of value. Is this outcome meaningful? Is this design beautiful? Is this output actually true? Should this thing exist at all?
Wait, I have to challenge this premise slightly. I want to push back on that.
Go ahead.
If love is defined as alignment with the good and doing what ought to be done, I mean, human beings are incredibly inefficient. We do irrational, destructive, or seemingly pointless things all the time. We aren't perfect, rational actors always optimizing for the good.
That's very true.
So how does our messiness and inefficiency fit into this high-minded concept of love or alignment?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that very inefficiency is exactly Thornberry's point. Human beings are spectacularly inefficient from a purely mechanistic or evolutionary standpoint. And thank goodness we are.
Why?
Because if we only optimize for biological survival and caloric efficiency, we would never have created art. We would never have written poetry. We would certainly never engage in acts of profound self-sacrifice.
Right. There's absolutely no biological survival metric that requires a species to spend years painting the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel or composing a symphony that makes people weep.
From the perspective of a fitness function optimizing for survival, building a cathedral is a massive waste of energy and resources. Humans embrace mistakes. We intentionally reject efficiency in order to pursue beauty.
We do things just for the sake of them being beautiful.
We create things that serve zero pragmatic survival purpose simply because we recognize that they have intrinsic transcendent value. They are expressions of meaning through conscious judgment and teleological intent.
Right.
We create them because we love them into existence, because we believe they ought to exist to make the world more reflective of the good. A machine cannot make that calculation because goodness and beauty are not mathematical variables that can be optimized in a loss function.
And the source material issues a really stark, almost chilling warning about this. It warns about the danger of optimization without love.
Yeah, this is a crucial part of the critique.
It argues that without this conscious alignment with the teleological good, optimization just becomes blind, directionless power. It becomes highly capable, but utterly meaningless.
And mathematically, that is a frightening prospect. Think about the classic paperclip maximizer thought experiment, but let's frame it ontologically.
Yeah.
If you have an AI system that is incredibly powerful at optimizing for a specific metric, say maximizing user engagement and time on site for a social media platform, but it has absolutely no capacity for love.
Right. No capacity to ask, is this good for the human mind?
Yeah.
Is this fostering human flourishing?
Exactly. It will optimize its way right into destroying human attention spans or radicalizing entire populations simply because outrage and fear are highly efficient at fulfilling the engagement fitness function.
Wow.
The system is hyper-competent but completely blind to value.
It knows exactly how to hit the target with perfect accuracy,
Oh,
but it has absolutely no idea why we are shooting arrows in the first place.
Precisely. It lacks the why.
Yeah.
And the why is what Thornberry defines as love.
So, having explored this entire philosophical architecture of light, the conscious perception of truth, life, the hormetic struggle of embodied experience, and love, the teleological orientation toward the good, what does this framework ultimately tell us about ourselves? And what does it tell us about the future of this technology?
That brings us to the ultimate synthesis, the human distinctive and what the author calls prohibited reductions.
The conclusion Thornberry draws is that the unique human integration of these three elements, light, life, and love, is what actually produces true intentionality and creative authorship.
You need all three unified in a single conscious being to create actual meaning. You cannot isolate them.
And the text gets very prescriptive here. It outlines what it calls prohibited reductions. These are essentially critical philosophical guardrails for how we should think, speak, and legislate regarding AI going forward.
Yeah, and they are very clear.
It says we must explicitly reject any framing of AI development as approaching human ontology. We have to stop treating consciousness or creativity as something that will eventually just magically emerge if we stack enough complex computations and parameters on top of each other.
This is a direct, systematic attack on the prevailing narrative in a lot of Silicon Valley tech circles right now.
Oh, for sure.
There is a deeply held, almost religious belief by many technologists that the human brain is essentially just a wet meat computer, and therefore if we build a silicon computer that is complex enough, with enough trillions of parameters, consciousness, emotion, and creativity will inevitably arise as emergent properties of the system.
Just spontaneously.
Right. Thornberry categorizes this as a fundamental, dangerous category error.
Ah.
It is confusing the highly detailed simulation of a thing for the actual essence of the thing.
So what does this all mean for the scale argument? You hear this constantly in debates about AI. People say, sure, maybe GPT-4 or Midjourney can't do X or Y right now, but wait until GPT-8, wait until we have stable quantum computing.
Just add more parameters.
Right. If we just give the models more training data, more compute power, and a more complex neural architecture, it will eventually cross the threshold into true creativity and consciousness.
Thornberry's response to the scale argument is what the text calls the final governing formulation, and it is uncompromising.
Let's hear it.
The formulation states, the inability of algorithms to replicate creative intent is not a temporary technological limitation waiting to be solved by better hardware. It is a permanent ontological boundary.
It's a hard wall. It is an impassable barrier.
It is a hard wall. No increase in computational volume, no matter how vast, no matter how many data centers you build, can ever bridge the gap between processing a mathematical symbol and perceiving a truth.
Right.
You cannot scale up statistical iteration until it magically becomes lived, embodied experience. You cannot optimize a mathematical system until it accidentally discovers teleological meaning. They are fundamentally, categorically different modes of existence.
To bring back our earlier analogy, giving a system more computing power just gives you a faster, more complex, higher resolution thermometer. It can process the data infinitely faster, but it still doesn't know what heat actually feels like.
Exactly. Scaling up the processing power of a machine that structurally lacks light, life, and love just gives you a more powerful simulator of human output. It never, ever bridges the ontological gap.
I think this is actually a deeply empowering, grounding message. It is so easy to look at the headlines every day, to see the staggering things these generative models can do, and feel a sense of existential dread. It's easy to feel obsolete.
Oh, absolutely.
But this framework reminds us that AI is just a tool A staggeringly powerful, historically unprecedented tool operating within complex patterns and logic, but it fundamentally lacks what the companion script beautifully calls the gap of the soul.
The gap of the soul.
Yeah, the machine doesn't face death. It doesn't wrestle with the meaning of its own existence. It doesn't wake up in the middle of the night wondering if it's doing the right thing with its life. Therefore, the human spark, that messy, inefficient, deeply feeling, hormetic core of who we are, is utterly irreplaceable.
It completely shifts the locus of our anxiety. Instead of worrying that machines will wake up and replace human creativity, we should understand that they ontologically cannot.
They just can't.
The real danger is much more subtle. The danger is not that machines will become like us. The danger is that we might degrade our own understanding of what creativity and meaning are, to the point where we willingly accept the machine's sterile simulation as a substitute for the real thing.
Wow. Let's briefly summarize the massive journey we've just taken through Thornberry's critique.
Right.
We started by dismantling the illusion of machine creativity, realizing that AI is merely engaging in statistical simulation and refinement without actual participation in reality.
Yeah.
We looked at how it is structurally imprisoned by dependency and fitness functions, meaning it optimizes without teleological purpose, entirely lacking love. We explored how it processes symbolic patterns without perceiving actual truth, lacking light.
Right.
And we saw how it iterates mathematically without any existential stakes or physical friction, lacking life. True human creativity requires the unbreakable, conscious unification of all three.
It requires a being that is fully awake to reality, deeply embedded in the physical friction of the world, and striving for something of ultimate transcendent value.
And as the companion script reminds us in its final call to action, understanding this reality, understanding human purpose, should not be a journey characterized by fear or constant, stressful competition with our own tools.
No, it shouldn't.
It should be an ongoing journey of clarity. We are not competing with algorithms. We are operating in an entirely different dimension of existence.
This raises an important question, though, and it's something I think is vital to reflect on as these tools become ubiquitous.
Okay, what is it?
We talked extensively earlier about Thornberry's concept of hormesis, the biological and philosophical idea that human growth, transformation, and true creativity require the friction of life.
The struggle, the risk, the failures, the blank page.
Exactly. So if we accept that the struggle itself is necessary to forge the meaning, what happens to our own human spark if we begin using these incredibly powerful AI tools to systematically remove all the friction from our daily creative processes?
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
If we use generative AI to outline our novels, draft our difficult emails, generate our concept art, and completely bypass the terror of the blank page, by outsourcing the effort, are we inadvertently opting out of the very participation that makes our creations meaningful in the first place?
Are we trading the vital, transformative friction of life for the sterile efficiency of a machine and slowly losing the soul of the work in the process? That is a haunting, profound thought to leave on.
It's something we all have to answer for ourselves.
You step into the world of creative technology, and suddenly you realize you aren't just choosing a tool to make your life easier. You are deciding exactly how much of the human struggle you are willing to surrender. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Thornberry's incredible framework. We encourage you to keep seeking truth, to keep fully participating in the messy, beautiful reality of life, and to keep aligning whatever it is you create with the good.